Hi everybody. This is the second of two videos that show how we made a remote control console that changes the content displayed on a trio of TVs. In the first video, we created the layout that you see here using DGLux5. This is currently an interactive application that does nothing. It allows you to select a TV from this top group and select a data output from this bottom group, but it does not in fact update the content on our TVs. So that's what we'll be doing in this second video. This project takes advantage of DSA's capability to host some data on the server that is hosting DSA. You go into the data panel in DGLux5 and right-click Data and select Add Node and name your node, like so. And then you want to give your node 3 values. You can name your values anything that you like, but each value should relate to the display in question. So if you're using 3 tablets in your trade show booth, you could name your nodes tablet 1, tablet 2, tablet 3. If you have televisions in your reception area and your production floor and your facilities room, you could name them accordingly. The important thing is that each one of these data values is going to relate to one of your screens. And you want to give them some placeholder URLs to work with. So you just right click and go to set and enter a URL. Like so. Set So now what you have is some data on your DSA server that relates to your displays. You have a data node stored for each of your displays, and you have a URL associated to each of those displays, and that's stored in your DSA data. Now the next thing we're going to do is create some logic that will make the URL associated with each of these nodes, for example, example.com. We're going to make some logic that makes an iframe display a different URL depending on the hash value of the current URL. And when I say hash value, I mean the string after the URL that's identified by a number sign, like so. Sometimes it's also called an anchor value or a fragment identifier, but it's this portion of a URL right here. So I want to open index.dg5 and insert an iframe on this page, like so. And I want to make that iframe the full size of the page, like so. The iframe is controlled by this URL property. If you change what's in this property, you change what's displayed by the iframe. Like so. So we want to insert some data flow on the stage, a web document block. This block is very important because it's going to track the current hash value for us. You can see currently it says hash equals test right here. If we were to change that, you can see it changed to test 123. And we're also going to want a load value block based on one of our TV nodes. So I'm just going to drag this to the data flow. But it's not only going to work for TV1, it's going to change based on what is selected. So I'm going to rename this so I don't get confused and just name it load value. And the third and final data flow block that we'll need here is a concatenate block, which appropriately enough you can find under string operations. And we are going to concatenate the path to our parent TV kiosk node, which you can copy and paste into this field by dragging and holding Control and Option before you drop, and then it will paste only the path. And then you want to add a slash. You could add it up here, you can add it in this second concatenated input, it doesn't matter. And then finally you want to add the hash value. Now if we change this hash value to the same value as one of these nodes, like so, now the output of our concatenate block is the path to this node, which has the value of this URL. So if I make this output the path of my load value block, now the output of my load value block is the URL specified for that node. So if I change my hash value to TV2, the output of my load value block becomes this URL. And if I change it to TV3, it will become this URL right here, like so. So now all I need to do is take the output of this load value block and bind it to the URL of my iframe, like so. And now if I change the hash value, the page that is loaded changes. At this point, I would recommend going to your displays, whatever they are, and entering the URL that will open this DG5 file. So you'll want to save it wherever you're editing it. And then on each of those TVs, you'll want to navigate to this viewer link that you can get to by right-clicking Preview and selecting Open Viewer Link. Now it's blank right now because there's no hash value specified. If I specify a hash value of one of my nodes from my data panel, then the URL associated to that node will open in my iframe. So what I would recommend is, since you now have a data value for each of your screens, I would recommend going to each of those screens, entering this viewer URL, and entering a hash value that is the same as the node that pertains to this TV, that relates to this TV. And then walk away. You won't have to touch those screens again, because the whole point of this project is now you'll be able to change the value that's loaded by that iframe from somewhere else, from DGLux5 or from your phone or from your computer. So now that you have your TVs displaying your viewer link with your hash value after it, now all you need is some logic that is going to change these node values, these URLs, based on interaction with the console. That is actually very easy. You just go to your console, and the first thing you'll need to do is add a URL that you want each of these buttons to open. So I'm going to go to my symbols panel, right-click my content symbol, edit it, right-click it in the outline and select Edit Properties, and add a button URL. Now each of these symbols has a parameter called button URL. And I'll say I want my weather symbol to open weather.com, and I want these other symbols to open these dashboards. These dashboards are publicly available on the internet, so I will need an internet connection for whatever computer is running my displays, or I'll need it to be on the same network that created them. Now each of these buttons holds a URL, but we haven't told it what to do with that URL yet. What we'll do is go into the symbol again. So in the symbols panel, right-click the content symbol and choose Edit. And then in the data flow for the symbol, we already have one block that's here that was automatically generated when we created a visual property based on selection in the previous video. We're going to ignore that and go over to our metrics panel where our TV nodes are and right click one of those and take the set action, which here in DGLux5 you could manually enter a string here and click invoke to change that node, but we don't want to do that. We want our data flow to change the node when certain criteria are met. So we'll drag this set action to the data flow. Now we want this action to be invoked when the user clicks our button. So we'll go to the advanced properties of the content symbol and search for onClick, and take the onClick event and bind that to the invoke trigger of the set action data flow block. Then we need to determine what path this set action block should update. To do that, we need to know what the currently selected TV is. So I'm going to save my changes and leave the symbol for a moment. And in data flow for my page, I'm going to add a case block that will take the currently selected TV and output the name of that TV node. So first I need to go to the parent group for my TVs. And in the selection properties, I need to take that selected index and I'll bind that to the input of the case block. And again, this is the number that changes when the user selects a different TV. So you can see the input number changing here as different TVs are selected. And then based on whether it's index number 0, 1, or 2, I'll output the name of that TV. So I need to add one case to this case block by clicking the plus sign. And my possible cases are 0, 1, and 2. And if index 0 is selected, I want to return TV1. If index 1 is selected, I want to return TV2, and if index 2 is selected, I want to return TV3. Now I have a data flow block that's keeping track of what the currently selected TV is. So now I'll go back into my symbol and give it a property that will track the same thing. So I'll call this property current TV. And what I'll do is I'll take the output of this case block and bind it to the current TV for all of the symbols. Now my symbols have access to this information, which TV is selected. And if I go back to that set block that we started, in the symbol data flow, I can set that TV as the path that we need our set block to update. So I'll need a concatenate block, and I'll have it concatenate two inputs. The first one will be the path to the parent TV kiosk node. So I'll drag that, and to make sure that I am only pasting the path and not the value, I will hold Control and Option before dropping it. And I'll need to type a slash after that path. And then for the second value to concatenate, I will bind the current TV from the symbol parameters. So the stage data flow is tracking which TV is currently selected, telling that to all of the symbol instances, and then that value, whatever is stored here, will concatenate it into a path, the output of which we'll give to the set block. And then the value that we want to set will be the button URL for whatever button is clicked. So this set block is basically doing all of the heavy lifting of our console. It's basically saying when a content button is clicked, go to the data path for the currently selected TV and set that node to the URL that we have assigned to this button. So this button is doing, this set action is doing all the work. So now if I click OK, now I think my application should work. So if I go into preview mode and I watch these data nodes right here, what should happen is when I select a TV and then a content button, the URL associated to that button should get assigned to that node. And on my TVs where I have web browsers open with this node string as their hash value, those TVs should display the content associated with the button. So I'm going to test that by clicking TV1 and then clicking Data Center. And indeed, the URL for my data center dashboard gets assigned to my TV1 node in my DSA hosted data. And if I want to see that in action, I can quickly go over to my index.dg5 and type hash TV1, and when I press enter, that dashboard should open. And there's my data center dashboard. So if I were to try it again, if I were to click TV2 and then select this logistics dashboard, I can see this URL is the correct URL for my logistics application. And if I were to go to index.dg5 on a TV where the hash value was TV2 instead of TV1, it should load the logistics dashboard. And indeed, this is my logistics dashboard. So that is all of the logic that you need to create your remote controlled kiosk. The end result looks like what you see here. These are 3 TVs that we set up, and we opened web browsers on those TVs with the hash values TV1, TV2, and TV3. And then we used our control console from a separate machine to update the content on those TVs. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos about the capabilities of DSA and DGLux5.